Welcome back. We're in the nightmare math of nuclear war today.
Nightmare math is crazy, but that is exactly what it feels like.
The wild part is how fast it all collapses once a launch is confirmed.
Right. Like people imagine a whole dramatic day, and it is minutes.
Minutes, and the president is already being moved.
And then the helicopter may get cooked by the blast physics, too.
That part sounds absurd until you realize nobody is kidding.
The Secret Service has to protect him, and the military needs his orders.
So the system is literally pulling him in opposite directions.
It's the most terrifying tug-of-war in history.
And there are no parachutes in Marine One, which is insane.
Wait, they have to go fetch parachutes from the White House office?
That detail is so specific it almost becomes funny again.
Except it is a story about state survival, not comedy.
What got me is the universal unlock code thing.
Yeah, the fact that the president can pre-authorize a future launch is wild.
It sounds like science fiction until you realize it is bureaucracy.
Which is somehow more frightening than science fiction.
Because the whole machine is built for continuity, even after decapitation.
That's the word, decapitation, and it's chilling in this context.
And then you realize the retaliation logic can become its own monster.
Especially when the warning window is under 10 minutes.
The tracking is so fast that the first question is just, where is it going?
And that first question decides whether civilization gets a second act.
Which is absurd, because that is such a tiny margin for error.
And the missile can't be recalled once it is out.
So once it starts, the world is basically trapped in momentum.
That's why the talk about interceptor missiles feels so flimsy.
44 interceptors against entire arsenals is not a plan. That's a wish.
A very expensive wish with a defense budget attached.
And they're testing against curated scenarios, not chaos.
Of course, because chaos is not cooperative.
The bullet versus bullet line is almost too perfect.
A bullet with a bullet, while both are moving absurdly fast in space.
That's not defense, that's gambling with physics.
And the warhead can have multiple warheads and decoys, too.
So even the fantasy of shooting it down gets uglier on contact.
What did you make of the North Korea choice as the trigger?
It makes sense because the launch behavior is so unpredictable.
Yeah, the unannounced tests are what make everyone jumpy.
Imagine being in a bunker and not knowing if it is a test or an attack.
That anxiety alone can start a disaster.
And then one bad assumption becomes retaliation, and then Russia enters.
That is the whole chain reaction, just fear wearing a suit.
Fear wearing a suit is such a nasty line.
But it is basically the command structure.
The thing that stuck with me was the scale of the damage.
The initial flash alone is like 180 million degrees.
A 9-mile radius catching fire instantly is horrifying.
And then the blast wave, the radiation, the fires multiplying.
So the apocalypse is not one event, it is a cascade.
And the firestorms become their own giant monsters.
That's the part people don't visualize enough.
1,000 fires the size of cities is not human imagination anymore.
It turns into a landscape that no longer has a normal inside it.
Then comes nuclear winter, which is the long tail of the nightmare.
That 5 billion estimate is the number that punches through the chest.
Because now it is not just cities, it is the planet's food system.
Exactly. Agriculture breaks and everybody starts sliding.
And apparently New Zealand and Australia become the refuge theory.
Refuge theory sounds like a travel blog written by doomsday people.
Book your climate apocalypse package now.
But the point is bleak. Only a few places might still grow food.
Which means survival becomes geography, then luck, then violence.
What I liked was how she tied fear to actual policy history.
Reagan seeing the day after and changing his posture is huge.
A TV movie nudging a president toward disarmament is almost unbelievable.
Yet that is politics, man. One image can move mountains.
The Reykjavik moment matters because it proves reversal is possible.
And the stockpile dropping from 70,000 to around 12,000 is not nothing.
Not nothing, but still way too much to sleep comfortably.
Way too much is the understatement of the century.
I think her hope is less about zero overnight and more about pressure.
Right. Presidents can move things fast when they decide to.
That is the uncomfortable optimism in all of this.
I still wonder whether one leader is enough to solve a system like this.
Maybe not solve it, but they can create momentum, which matters.
And that keeps coming back to me, the power of narrative.
She basically argues that stories change behavior before spreadsheets do.
Which is terrifying if the wrong story takes over first.
Like, say, the story that everyone else is about to launch.
Exactly, the most dangerous rumor on Earth.
Her whole point about conspiracy theories was interesting too.
Yeah, she hates that phrase because it can dismiss real curiosity.
And to be fair, a lot of people do hide behind it.
But she's right that some conspiracies are just history catching up.
Area 51 is the perfect example because it was real secrecy, not fantasy.
The idea that even saying the name was once touchy is wild.
And then the CIA using strategic deception makes everything murkier.
That spy plane crash story was bananas.
Drunk engineer misses the shuttle and accidentally helps a cover story.
Hollywood would reject that for being too convenient.
But it shows how institutions shape what the public thinks happened.
So now every mystery gets two lanes, cover and disinformation.
That framework is actually useful because not everything is random noise.
Though it also makes the world feel permanently staged.
Maybe staged is too cynical, but managed is definitely true.
The CIA angle around brainwashing and MKUltra also gets messy fast.
Messy, yes, but not imaginary, which is the whole point.
I think that is where people get in trouble. They overcorrect.
Right. They swing from naive trust to total paranoia.
And she is basically arguing for disciplined suspicion.
Which is a much healthier habit than doom scrolling until 2 a.m.
True, because doom scrolling is just panic with a battery.
I also liked that she kept circling back to human agency.
Yeah, not an asteroid, not aliens, just us.
And if it is man-made, it has to be fixed by people.
That's the hard part, because people are the problem and the solution.
Which is kind of the whole emotional core of the episode.
Yeah, fear is real, but resignation is the actual enemy.
All right, before we spiral into a bunker fantasy, let's land this.
Please, I have no interest in becoming a subterranean farmer.
The big takeaway is that nuclear war is fast, messy, and terrifyingly human.
And the scary part is the system is built to act before thinking.
Next time we get into the stranger layer of the story.
Yeah, the hidden machinery behind secrecy and power gets even weirder.
Welcome back, because this episode gets brutally fast and brutally weird.
Yeah, once the missile is detected, the whole system starts sprinting.
And the insane part is, the sprint is basically happening without time to think.
Right, the decision tree starts before anyone even knows the full picture.
Which is a horrifying sentence for the fate of civilization.
Annie's point is that the apocalypse is not cinematic, it is procedural.
Hold on, because the president is the only one who can actually launch, right?
Yeah, the launch authority sits with one person, and that is wild.
One person for that much firepower feels almost medieval.
Except medieval kings did not have submarines off both coasts.
Okay, fair, the medieval king was underpowered.
But the scary thing is the president still needs time, and time is what the system destroys.
So then the Secret Service is trying to move him, while the military wants him to stay put.
Exactly. The people protecting him and the people needing him are pulling in opposite directions.
That is such a nightmare logistics problem.
And then Marine One becomes this tiny fragile object in a giant disaster.
The helicopter itself might get wrecked by the blast pulse.
The electromagnetic pulse is not some bonus attack, it is baked into the explosion.
So even if he gets airborne, the aircraft might just die in the sky.
And apparently the backup plan is the most terrifying sentence ever spoken. Tandem jump the president.
Wait, with a parachute?
Yes, and then you realize there are no parachutes in Marine One?
Of course there aren't, because normal aircraft planning is for cowards.
The parachutes are apparently in the White House office, which is somehow worse.
That detail sounds made up, but that is exactly why it feels real.
That is the whole book, though. Every insane detail reveals another layer of preparation.
And then comes the part that really got me, the universal unlock code.
That sounds like a spy movie prop, not real governance.
It basically lets the president authorize a launch after he dies.
Which means the system is already imagining the president being gone mid-crisis.
That is such a cold-blooded sentence.
And then it gets even stranger, because the retaliation is not free-form.
Right. The 82 missiles example was shocking to me.
You do not just improvise 83 because emotions are high.
Bureaucracy, but make it nuclear.
The most depressing kind of paperwork imaginable.
And Annie keeps coming back to North Korea as the trigger scenario.
Because unpredictability is the nightmare, not just capability.
The fact they test missiles without warning makes everyone else panic constantly.
Exactly. The command bunkers are watching and asking, is this space or war?
And if they misread one launch, the whole chain starts burning.
That is why deterrence feels so brittle, because one bad read changes history.
The thing that gets me is how few missiles it takes to destroy everything.
And how many are already sitting ready, just waiting?
The interceptor numbers were another gut punch, honestly.
44 interceptors against thousands of warheads is not a shield, it is a gesture.
A very expensive vibe check.
With a terrible success rate.
And then the warheads themselves can split and throw decoys.
Which makes the whole idea of just shooting them down feel almost fantasy-like.
She said it is like trying to shoot a bullet with a bullet, which is just insane.
And that is with both objects moving ridiculously fast, miles above Earth.
People hear defense system and assume safety, but the margins are absurd.
Then she drags us into the physical aftermath, which is somehow worse.
The flash alone is enough to ignite everything for miles.
1 megaton is not a blast, it is an atmosphere event.
And then the blast wave, the radiation, the fires all at once.
The horror is not one disaster, it is 10 disasters stacked together.
The phrase megafire is just devastating.
And once you zoom out, it becomes fire cities, not fireballs.
1,000 flashes of light, 1,000 blast waves, that image is impossible to shake.
That is why the nuclear winter part hits so hard, because even survivors do not get a normal world back.
5 billion dead is the number she lands on from the climate modeling.
Yeah, and that means the question becomes, who survives, not who wins.
New Zealand and Australia becoming the accidental premium plan for humanity is so bleak.
Global catastrophe, but make it a geography lesson.
But it is real, because agriculture collapses and sunlight itself becomes dangerous.
And then the underground survival fantasy falls apart fast, because resources disappear.
People always imagine order after disaster, and she is saying no, it becomes a fight.
Right, no rule of law, no clean recovery, just scarcity and violence.
That is why the old Khrushchev line lands so hard the survivors would envy the dead.
Because survival without society is not really survival in any meaningful sense.
What I liked is she does not stay in doom mode forever.
Yeah, she pivots to Reagan and Gorbachev as proof that narrative can shift policy.
The day after actually changed Reagan's thinking.
And that is huge, because presidents are not floating above emotion and media.
They are just people with better security and worse sleep.
Exactly, and one emotional reckoning helped push treaty reductions.
From 70,000 warheads down to around 12,500 is still massive progress.
Not zero, but not nothing either. And she is careful about that distinction.
I respect that she refuses to pretend there is a simple fix.
She keeps saying the solution has to be human, because the threat is human.
That also connects to her whole attitude about conspiracy theories.
Yeah, she does not like the lazy dismissal that curiosity equals nonsense.
Which is fair because sometimes the thing sounds crazy until it is declassified.
Like Area 51, where the word itself was once basically taboo.
The strategic deception story was wild, especially the fake crash narrative.
The CIA saw the press invent a cover story and basically went, perfect.
When misinformation accidentally helps your secret program, that is a little too on the nose.
And that is where her deeper argument lands, which is that secrecy breeds myth.
But she is also careful not to become a conspiracy maximalist.
Right, she keeps insisting on evidence, not vibes.
Evidence is such an annoying requirement for a dramatic story.
It really ruins the internet's favorite hobbies.
And that is what makes her useful, honestly, because she can separate thread from fantasy.
She talks about the CIA, MKUltra, brainwashing, but in a way that still respects rigor.
The idea that real programs sit underneath the myths is kind of unsettling.
Because then you have to ask what else is real that we filed away as internet noise.
That question is kind of the whole episode, isn't it?
Yeah, and the answer is usually more ordinary and more dangerous than people want.
All right, we should probably stop before we start price-checking bunkers.
Please, I am not doing subterranean real estate with you.
But seriously, the big takeaway is that speed is the enemy here.
And secrecy makes speed even more dangerous, because nobody learns the system until it is too late.
Next episode, we go even deeper into the machinery behind that secrecy.
Yeah, the hidden world of intelligence, cover stories, and power gets weirder.
Welcome back, because this episode gets terrifying in a very specific way.
We're inside the 72-minute window now, and that is not a comforting phrase.
No, because the whole point is how little time anyone actually has to think.
And how much of that time is just people screaming, "Where is the president?"
Exactly, which is somehow the least cinematic part of Apocalypse.
That's what gets me. It's not one genius decision, it's a chain of panic.
And the chain starts almost immediately, like minutes after detection.
3 minutes in, they're already telling the president to prepare a counterattack.
Which is wild because I need 3 minutes to decide lunch.
Bro, they need 3 minutes to end civilization or not.
And then the second confirmation lands around 8 or 9 minutes.
So the system is basically trust the first alarm, then pray the second one agrees.
And while that's happening, the Secret Service is deciding the president cannot stay put.
Right, because the White House becomes the dumbest possible place to be.
But then you get this weird tension where the military wants him available to launch.
So one group wants him alive, the other wants him reachable.
That is a horrifying office dispute.
Presidential logistics, except death is the deadline.
And then Marine One enters the chat, which feels safe until you remember the EMP problem.
That part is brutal because even escaping can fail because the bomb breaks electronics.
People hear EMP and think sci-fi, but it's just the pulse from the nuclear blast.
Exactly. One flash and suddenly your helicopter is a very expensive falling object.
And apparently there are backup plans for that too, which is almost worse.
The backup plan is basically strap the president to a human parachute and hope.
That sentence should never exist in a civilized society.
But that's the point. The civilized society part is hanging by a thread.
And the scariest detail is the command structure isn't neat. It's layered and rushed.
Yeah, the president has the authority, but everyone else is scrambling around him.
Which sounds efficient until you realize efficiency is what kills you here.
Because the machine is built for speed, not wisdom.
And once the order is given, the numbers are insane.
Like 82 weapons in a response, not 83 because bureaucracy still exists somehow.
Civilization might end, but paperwork survives, of course.
The forms are eternal.
Then there's that unlock code if the president dies mid-crisis.
The universal unlock code is maybe the most nightmare sentence in the entire thing.
Because it means someone else can keep the launches going after the president is gone.
Exactly. Continuity of government turns into continuity of destruction.
That is such a dark sentence, I hate that it makes sense.
And then the scenario shifts from one launch to retaliation to total chain reaction.
That's where North Korea comes in, because the book needs a trigger that feels unstable.
Not arbitrary unstable, but the kind of unstable that makes commanders panic.
Right, because repeated launches without warning create paranoia in the system.
And paranoia in a nuclear bunker is basically gasoline.
In this story, gasoline is doing way too much work.
It really is, from helicopters to bunkers to generators.
The scary logic is that one mistaken read can become full retaliation.
Especially when they talk about jamming the president, as in overwhelming the decision process.
Which sounds less like governance and more like a hostage situation.
That's exactly it. The clock is doing violence to judgment.
And then the interceptors come up, and this is where the fantasy really dies.
Because people love saying, we'll just shoot it down, like it's a movie.
But 44, interceptors against hundreds or thousands, is not a plan.
No, it's a lottery ticket with a military budget.
That is offensive to lottery tickets, honestly.
At least lottery tickets don't pretend to be existential defense.
And then there's the physics, which is absurdly unforgiving.
A bullet with a bullet, except both are moving like madness in space.
And the success rate is only good on a curated test day.
Curated is such a polite word for not real life.
The real-life version is 1,000 fireballs and then nuclear winter.
That's the part people don't emotionally compute, because fire is already too much.
And this is not one city, it's 1,000 flashes across a country.
1,000 ground zeros means 1,000 separate hells.
The description of the blast wave alone is insane.
And then the radiation, the collapsing structures, the mega fires, all of it stacks.
What gets me is how quickly the book moves from immediate death to the longer horror.
Because surviving the first hour does not mean surviving the year.
If anything, survival becomes the punishment.
Yeah, no rule of law, no food system, no real government, just collapse.
And the bunkers only work until the diesel runs out.
Even Apocalypse has an operating budget.
That line is too good and too depressing.
Then you hit the nuclear winter numbers, and that is where it becomes planetary.
5 billion people dead is not a statistic. That is basically species failure.
And the weird part is, the places that might still sustain agriculture are tiny.
New Zealand and Australia keep coming up like some cursed survival brochure.
The world's bleakest travel recommendation.
But it shows how unequal the aftermath would be, even for survivors.
Right, because sunlight, ozone damage, ice sheets, failed crops, all of it compounds.
And then history itself starts dying because there's no one left to record it.
That's the most chilling line in the whole thing. History ends with the war.
Which is why the Reagan-Gorbachev part matters so much.
Yeah, because the only real solution in the book is political imagination.
Reagan sees the day after, gets shaken, and then changes course.
That's incredible, because a movie shifts a president more than ideology does.
And then you get Reykjavik, the line that nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought.
That line still feels like the cleanest sentence in the whole mess.
It is, but the progress is still only down from 70,000 warheads to about 12,000.
Which is progress, just not the kind that lets anyone relax.
And that's the emotional shift in the book, from fear to responsibility.
You can tell she does not want readers to just panic and shut the book.
She wants people to feel the scale and still believe change is possible.
That's what makes it work honestly, because despair by itself is lazy.
Lazy despair is a terrible political strategy.
It really is, and also a terrible personality trait.
I also liked how she pushed back on the word conspiracy theory.
Yeah, because curiosity gets mocked when it should be rewarded.
There is a difference between skepticism and lazy dismissal.
Huge difference, and a lot of people hide behind the lazy version.
Her Area 51 example is perfect, because secrecy creates its own mythology.
And sometimes the myth is wrong, but the secrecy is real.
Like the spy plane story, where the cover story becomes its own weapon.
Exactly. Strategic deception is basically institutional gaslighting with paperwork.
That is terrifyingly accurate.
Governments do love a neat narrative.
But the deeper point is that intelligence agencies live inside ambiguity.
Yeah, and once you accept that, a lot of wild stories become at least plausible.
Not true by default, just plausible enough to investigate.
That's the journalist's real job, not to worship doubt, just to test it.
And somehow that circles back to the nuclear book, because the truth is the point.
Right, the scariest thing is not fiction, it's the parts that already exist.
Which is why the 72-minute window feels less like a scenario and more like a warning.
And a warning only works if people actually hear it before the clock starts.
All right, I think that's enough doom for one sitting.
Thank God, because my nervous system is filing a complaint.
Mine left the building about 12 fireballs ago.
We'll come back with the hidden machinery behind all of this next time.
Episode 3 is where the secrecy really starts sweating.
And I promise it gets even weirder.